Okay, part 2. I suppose you'll be taking him on as a plainclothes man, one of the others suggested, laughing. Why didn't you go straight to the police and report your loss? Asked another. That reminded Emil about Sergeant Yeshka at home and of his dream, and he began to feel nervous again. Well? Asked the superintendent. Emil took the plunge. I chalked a red nose and a moustache on the statue of Grand Duke Charles in Neustadt, he confessed. So, you'd better arrest me, sir. I'm just going to show you the picture. This is a picture of all the reporters asking Emil, and we can see the superintendent sitting at his desk and Emil sitting in front of them, and underneath it says, "What a story, country boy turns detective." There he is. So you'd better arrest me, sir, said Emil. To his surprise, the 5 men just burst out laughing, instead of looking grave as he had expected. Bless me, exclaimed the big man. We can't go arresting one of our best detectives. Oh, do you mean that? Oh, that is a relief. Emil sighed heavily and turned to one of the reporters. You don't remember me, he said. No, I can't say I do, said Emil. You paid my fare yesterday on a number 177 tram because I hadn't any money, Emil reminded him. Right, let me just repeat that. You don't remember me, said Emil. No, I can't say I do, said the reporter. You paid my fare yesterday on a number 177 tram because I hadn't any money, Emil reminded him. Of course I did. I remember. And you asked for my address so that you could pay me back the money. Yes, and now I can. Emil put his hand in his pocket and brought out some pennies. I'd like to give it to you, please, he said. No, that's all right, said the young man hastily. Didn't you tell me your name too? Yes, Emil Tischbein. And mine's Kaesner, said the journalist, and they shook hands. Oh, so you're old acquaintances. Splendid, exclaimed the superintendent. How would you like to come along with me, Emil, and see my newspaper office, said Mr. Kaesner. We could stop at a cafe on the way and have some cream cakes. Oh, well, I'd like to treat you, said Emil. This amused the journalists very much. You are independent, they said. No, this is on me, said Mr. Kaesner, meaning he would pay. Thank you very much. Emil was all smiles, but Gustav and the professor are waiting for me outside. Well, they must come too, said Mr. Kaesner. The other journalists asked a few more questions and noted down Emil's answers. Then one of them asked the superintendent if he thought the theft was Grundeis's first offence, first criminal act. I doubt it, was the reply. Indeed, there may be a big surprise in store for all of us there. And if you ring me up in an hour's time, gentlemen, I may have news for you. Then they all said goodbye, and Emil went back with Mr. Kaesner to Sergeant Ludwig's room. He was still eating, but greeted Emil cheerfully. Oh, back again? Young Uberbein, he said. Tischbein, said Emil. They picked up Gustav and the professor, and Mr. Kaesner bundled the boys into his car and drove them to a cafe. On the way, Gustav honked his horn, and the others were delighted when it made Mr. Kaesner jump. The cafe was first-rate. They had cherry slices with masses of whipped cream and told Mr. Kaesner all about their adventures, about the Council of War in Nicholas Square and having to follow the thief in a taxi, and the night in the hotel when Gustav was disguised as a lift boy, and of the terrific row at the bank. Well, you really are grand chaps, said Mr. Kaesner at the end of the story, and they felt so pleased with themselves that they had another round of cherry slices. Then they separated, and Gustav and the professor went home by bus, promising to ring up Little Tuesday, and Emil drove with Mr. Kaesner to his office. The building in which the newspaper was printed was a huge place, almost as big as the police headquarters and far busier. People kept scuttling to and fro in the corridors as though they were running in an obstacle race. They went into a room where a pretty fair-haired girl was sitting at a desk. Mr. Kaesner immediately began to dictate Emil's story to her, and she took it straight down on the typewriter. He walked about the room as he dictated, and every little while he asked Emil, "Is that right?" And Emil nodded, and then the typing went on again. At the end of it, he rang up the superintendent, and Emil heard him say, "What's that? Well, isn't that amazing? Not? All right, I won't say a word. What? As well? Oh, delighted to hear it. Thanks very much. Well, that is a story, all right." He hung up and looked at Emil almost as if he had never seen him before. "We must have a picture of you, Emil. Come along quick." "Gosh," exclaimed Emil, greatly surprised. "A picture? Me? Why?" But he went obediently with Mr. Casener up 3 floors in the lift, and then into a very brightly lit room with several large windows. Emil tied at his hair, and then his photograph was taken. Finally, they went to the compositor's room, where there was a clatter, like 1,000 typewriters at work all at once. Mr. Casener gave a man there the pages which the fair-haired girl had typed. "This is a very important story," he said. "I'll be back in a minute to discuss it. I've just got to send this nipper back to his grandmother." Then they went down in the lift to the ground floor and out into the street. Mr. Casener hailed a taxi and put Emil inside. "Take this young man to 15 Schumann Street, as quick as you can," he said, and gave the driver his fare, which Emil did not like. Then he and Emil shook hands. "Give your mother my kind regards when you get home again," he said. "She must be a pet." That's an interesting expression, actually. I've not heard that before. She must be a pet. I mean, it's a compliment. I think it's sort of saying, she must be a really lovely person. But I've never heard that. She must be a pet. "Yes, she is," Emil replied. "Oh, and another thing," Mr. Casener called as the taxi started off. "Be sure you get hold of this evening's paper and read what it says. You'll have the surprise of your life." Emil leaned out of the window to wave to him, and Mr. Casener waved back until the taxi swung around a corner and was out of sight. Sorry, I'm just pausing here because I need to show you a picture, and there's quite a bit written under it, which I will read to you. And it says, "A huge place, almost as big as the police headquarters." This is the newspaper office. All right. Chapter 16. Emil has no money to spend. Okay. As the taxi was going down the famous Berlin street, called Unter den Linden, Emil knocked 3 times on the glass partition, which separated him from the driver, and the car stopped immediately. "We're nearly there?" he asked. "Yes," said the driver. "I'm awfully sorry to trouble you, but I've just remembered my suitcase and the bunch of flowers for my grandmother. I left them at the Café Justi in Kaiser Avenue yesterday, and I'll have to fetch them. Will you please take me there first?" "Well, that depends," said the taxi driver. "How much money you got, in case what the gentleman gave me isn't enough?" "Oh, plenty," said Emil cheerfully, "and I must have those flowers." "All right," said the driver, and he turned the taxi round and drove through the Brandenburg Gate and the City Park to Nollendorf Square. Now that everything was all right, the square seemed to Emil quite a harmless and pleasant place. But all the same, he put his hand in his breast pocket to make sure his money was still there. They drove along Motz Street, then turned right and stopped outside the cafe. Emil went in and asked the girl behind the counter to give him the flowers and the suitcase, which had been left there the day before. She handed them over, and he thanked her and got back into the taxi. "That's all right," he said. "Now we can go on to my grandma's." The taxi turned round and drove back the way they'd come. They crossed the river Spree and went through some very old streets and past some old grey houses, and Emil wished he could have got a better look at them. But he was having trouble with the suitcase, which would keep toppling over. And the draught from the open window tugged at the paper round the flowers till he was half afraid that flowers and all would be blown right out of the taxi. Then the driver braked suddenly and stopped outside 15 Schumann Street. "Well, here we are," said Emil, and got out. "What about the fare?" "Well, as it happens, I've got 6pence change for you," said the driver. No, I'll keep it, said Emil grandly. Buy yourself a cigar. Oh, thank you, my boy, said the man. But I don't smoke, I chew. And he drove away. Meaning, I don't smoke tobacco, I chew tobacco. Emil's relations lived high up in a block of flats and he had to walk up 3 flights of stairs. As soon as he rang the bell, there were sounds of excitement within. Then the door flew open and there stood Grandma. She seized him by the shoulders, gave him a kiss on one cheek and a friendly slap on the other and pulled him inside, exclaiming, "Well, you young scamp, you." Then Aunt Martha appeared, saying, "Well, well, nice stories we've been hearing about you, my boy." Pony came out of the kitchen wearing one of her mother's aprons and held out an elbow for him to shake. "Look out, my hands are wet," she said by way of greeting. "I'm just doing the washing up." Then they all went into the sitting room and Emil had to sit on the sofa, while his grandmother and his aunt looked at him as though he were an oil painting in a picture gallery. "Have you got the money?" Pony inquired eagerly. "Yeah, of course." And Emil brought it out of his pocket and gave the £5 note and one of the pound notes to his grandmother. "Here it is, Grandma, with Mum's love. She says you mustn't be cross that she hasn't sent you any these last few months, but business wasn't very good. She sent a little more than usual to make up." "Oh, thank you, my dear boy," said the old lady, and she gave him back the pound note. "That's for you, for being such a good detective." No, Emil drew back. I can't take it. I really can't. I've still got a whole £1 that Mum gave me for myself." "You just do what your grandmother tells you," she replied. "Put the money in your pocket and say no more about it." "No, I can't do that," Emil protested. "Oh, don't be silly," said Pony. "I shouldn't have to be asked twice." "No, really, I'd rather not," he insisted. "Here, take it, or you'll make me angry," the old lady said, "and that'll bring on my rheumatics." "Take it and be done with it," said Aunt Martha, pushing the pound note into his pocket. "Well, all right," Emil yielded doubtfully, meaning he gave in. "If that's how you feel about it, thank you very much, Grandma." "I have much to be thankful for," she returned, stroking his hair. Then Emil gave her the flowers and Pony fetched a vase for them. But when they were unwrapped, nobody knew whether to laugh or cry. "Oh dear, they looked like a bunch of dried herbs. They look like a bunch of dried herbs," wailed Pony. Here is a picture of Emil's grandmother. And underneath it says, "Emil's grandmother looked at him. She is the jolliest grandmother I know, though her life has been a hard one. Some people find it easy to be cheery and others don't. Emil's grandmother used to live with his parents before his father died. After that, Mrs. Tischbein found that she could not earn enough money to keep 3 people, and the old lady went to Berlin to live with her other daughter. She writes often to Emil and his mother and ends all her letters, 'I am quite well and hope this finds you the same.'" Okay. I am going to stop there for today, when we will finish Emil and Detectives tomorrow. And then we'll start Danny, the Champion of the World, the day after. All right, everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.